On today's show, you shouldn't need any more proof. Darius Garland is going to be an all-star. He dropped 40 points, and the Cavs beat the Toronto Raptors to extend their winning streak to 12 games. We'll talk about all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and making it your first listen every day. You can find this show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure to subscribe, drop us a 5-star rating, and leave us a nice review. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, Locked On Cavs now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Cavs newsletter. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Toronto Raptors 132-126 to extend their winning streak to 12 games. They did it because of Darius Garland. This was not a great game. This was not a game that we're going to remember for the Cavs playing well. I did not think they played very well in this game, but Darius Garland was awesome. When you look at reasons why they won this game, and there are a few of them, but Darius Garland's play is by far the biggest reason the Cavs winning streak went from 11 games to 12 games on Thursday night. So Garland finishes the night with 40 points. He becomes the fourth player in Cavs history to have 5 or more 40-point games. He joins LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Donovan Mitchell. Only those 4 have had 5 or more games with 40 points in Cavs history. Garland's final line was 40 points, 9 assists, 2 rebounds, 3 turnovers, was 14 of 22 from the floor, 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. This was a masterpiece for him. And this was a game that the Cavs needed it because coming off of Wednesday night and that game against the Thunder is what it is the best game of the NBA season so far. It is by far the best win the Cavs have this season. I think it is a significantly more impressive win than their come from behind victory over the Boston Celtics at the beginning of December. And then they had to come out and play the very next night. And that's a very tough thing to do. And throughout the year, I do think that the Cavs have responded well to these spots. Like, think all the way back to the middle of November when the Cavs were 15-0. They go into Boston. They lose that game in Boston by 3 points. And then they have to turn around and play at home the very next night against the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, they beat the Pelicans by 28. Part of that was the Cavs played well and they responded well to their first sort of, I don't even want to call that adversity, but their first loss. Part of it was the Pelicans stink and didn't have anybody available. Where the Raptors, I thought, played really, really hard on Thursday night. They wanted to win that game. They had almost their full roster available. They're just not very good, but they do have some nice players. Like Scotty Barnes is a nice player. RJ Barrett is a nice player. Manuel Quickley is a nice player. Like, they have nice players on the team. They're just not a very good team. And the Cavs, I don't think that this was some instance of the Cavs taking them lightly or the Cavs not caring about this. I don't think it was any of those things. I think what this was is the Cavs played an incredibly physical, emotional, important game the night before. And the come down from that was always going to be something that was difficult to deal with, right? Like, you cannot replicate the type of environment, the type of atmosphere that Wednesday night's game was played in. You can't replicate that every single night. You know, when you get to the playoffs, as we know, teams don't play back-to-backs. A big reason why teams don't play back-to-backs in the postseason is because games like Wednesday night, which felt like a playoff game, I think it felt like a second or third round game. Imagine if the team had to do that and then immediately play the next day. It would not be the best basketball. And this was not the best basketball on Thursday night. But the Cavs found a way because of Garland. And Garland was phenomenal. He was hitting shots. He was incredibly efficient. You know, he was what I thought he did on Thursday, really what I think he's done this week is he's gone from somebody who I think was who deserved to be an all-star. I will say that. I firmly had been in the camp that Darius Garland had been playing well enough to be an all-star and deserved to be in San Francisco for the all-star game when that break comes in February. I think he went from being someone that deserved to be there to now somebody that I don't see how he's not there. And I think that these performances, because of one, the stage of Wednesday night against OKC and how well he played in that game, and then two, to follow it up the very next day in a game without Donovan Mitchell and go out and drop 40 points, I think that's a really big thing too. Because Darius Garland has shown this year that last year was a fluke, that he is an all-star caliber guy. I think he is an all-NBA caliber guy. I felt like that for a very long time. And to see him go out and have this type of performance when the Cavs needed it, like they do not win this game without Darius Garland because they didn't have the juice. And it's not a big deal they didn't have the juice. You're not going to have the juice in all 82 games. This was, think back to the first of two losses to the Atlanta Hawks. Kenny Atkinson called that game a clunker. This was another clunker. It's just that Darius Garland exploded for 40 points, and that's why they were able to win this type of game. I think that this kind of performance in this spot, and I get it, like it's the Raptors. They're not a great team. No one's going to look at this game and go, man, when the Cavs really turned the corner, it wasn't that win over the Thunder. It was the next day. It was when they beat the Raptors. No, that's not what we're going to do. But given the situation, I think it's easy to say, okay, he stepped up when his team really needed it. And I do think as part of this all-star conversation, winning needs to matter. And the Cavs are 33-4. They're phenomenal. They're the best team in basketball, not by a wide margin because OKC's right there, but they are certainly on a tier above almost everybody else. And Darius Garland has been a big reason why they've had such a successful season. I think that the gap between him and Donovan Mitchell, while Donovan is the best player on this team still, and Donovan will probably continue to get better and continue to be the best player on this team for a while. But I don't think that the gap between Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland is some Grand Canyon size gap. I think it's a lot closer than people nationally realize. And people hold Donovan in such a high regard, and they should, because of things that he's done in the postseason, things that he's done in the past. And, he is I believe a 5-time All-Star, will be a 6-time All-Star when he's named an All-Star in a couple of weeks. Darius Garland has not accomplished all that yet, but I don't think that he's much lesser of a player than Donovan is. And I think that games like this will just help push him towards that stature in the league. I think that is what we're going to start to see as Darius Garland continues to play that way. What really stood out to me, aside from the fact that, he sensed the moment and knew that, okay, this is not our night. And it's really easy, I think, in the NBA because you play so many games. I think it's really easy when you're on a team that doesn't have it going on that night to say, you know what? We said it was 1 of 82 for that game against the Thunder, and it was. Now, is that a lie? Kind of. But you can look at this and say, if you're in Darius Garland's position, you could say it's 1 of 82. We've lost 4 games all year. We have a 5.5 game lead. Now it's 6 after the win, but a 5.5 game lead over the Boston Celtics for the 1 seed. If we drop this game, it's not a big deal. And you'd be right. Like, it would not be a big deal if the Cavs would have lost this game tonight. No one would have been saying, you know what, that win over OKC doesn't count because you didn't beat the Raptors the next day. But I think Garland sensed on Thursday night that let's not let that happen. Let's not give people a reason to doubt this team. He stepped up to the moment when his team needed him to. And he wasn't the only one. Like, I do want to talk about Max Strus. I'm definitely going to talk about Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen because they were both awesome in this game too. But the type of play that Darius Garland is able to summon, I think it's a special thing because it's not just the scoring. Like, the 40 points are exactly what's going to jump out at you, right? Like, that is the big splashy number. The fact that he made 4 threes, the fact that he was just super efficient scoring the basketball. I mean, 40 points on 22 shots is obviously a really good place to be. The fact that he scored 25 points in the second half, like, that's a really good place to be. But the fact that he also had 9 assists, it's not just that he's scoring 40 points because he's a super high volume guy with Donovan Mitchell out. No, he's still getting the rest of his team involved. And that is something that really matters. We've seen him be very clutch this season. He's been one of the best clutch players in basketball. And now we've seen him lead the Cavs to wins when either Donovan Mitchell is not having a great night or Donovan Mitchell's not available, because the Cavs have a long-term plan in place with, I think, all of their guys. Donovan Mitchell, we've seen Darius Garland sit games at points this season too, and I would bet that we will again. But that stuff should matter. And in seeing how Darius was able to play against Toronto on Thursday night, it just gives me the feeling that, I think the All-Star conversation with him is over. And the Cavs are still going to push him towards All-Star, and they should be pushing him towards All-Star. But at this point, I don't see how you could not include him in the All-Star conversation. Not in the conversation, excuse me. I don't know how he could not be an All-Star after what he's done this year, how much it's led to success for the Cavs. I just think it's time to end that conversation. Darius Garland should be an All-Star, and I think that Darius Garland will be an All-Star. Now, the All-Star conversation. I have long been against thinking the Cavs were going to have 4 guys in the game. I think I've changed my tune after Thursday night. I'll tell you why next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that is a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions, whether you've got one form or 20. TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention. That's what we want, right? While you get real-time updates on their progress, so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com. That's TurboTax.com today and get matched with your experts who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you listen. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you drop us a 5-star review. Make sure you tell a friend about Locked On Cavs as well. I just got done saying I think Darius Garland will be an All-Star. I have now, and I've been bouncing back and forth on this. I've now come around to I think the Cavs will get 4 All-Stars. I've come around to that line of thinking. I think Evan Mobley is a lock. What he did against Toronto was very impressive on Thursday. It was his second straight game with, more than 20, 10, and 5. He, against OKC, finished with, a great stat line, had 7 assists, had, I believe, 10 rebounds. Against Toronto, made 3 more threes, which is a really important part of his game that has just continued to flourish. Finished with 21 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, only took 11 shots to get there. Very efficient night, only had 2 turnovers. Like, he just continues to improve. He continues to get better. He's a dominant force on both ends of the floor. And I do love these matchups with Evan Mobley against Toronto. It does feel like every time he plays the Raptors, and you can go back to last year, you can go back to the season opening game. It feels like every time he plays the Toronto Raptors, he just wants to prove that he's better than Scotty Barnes. And I thought Scotty Barnes had a fine night for Toronto. He's not the most efficient player in the world right now. I think he is playing a little bit out of position for the Raptors, but like, he had 24 points, needed 20 shots to get there. 10 boards, 8 assists, but it's just, I think that Evan Mobley, every time he steps on the floor against Scotty Barnes, I think he wants to prove that, hey, no, the Cavs made the right pick by taking me 3rd overall instead of taking you, even though you won Rookie of the Year. I think that is I think that is something that is on Evan Mobley's mind every time he sees Scotty Barnes. And that's fine. And I think that's actually an awesome thing. So I think that he's going to be an All-Star. I'd be very surprised. I would be more surprised if Evan Mobley is not an All-Star. I think he's the second most likely guy to be an All-Star behind Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a lock, and I think Darius Garland is a lock. I don't think that there's much of a conversation to be had there anymore, because I think the coaches are going to value the winning, and I think that they see how integral those guys are to the success of the Cavs. This gets me to Jarrett Allen, who had another outstanding night. Finished 18 points, 15 rebounds, only needed 9 shots to get there. This is coming off of a game against OKC where you could make an argument he was the second best player on the floor, maybe even the best player on the floor in that game. He continues to impress. Now, he's not been the most consistent of the core four for the Cavs. I think that's a fair thing to say, but his last 2 weeks have been nothing short of incredible for this team. He's been awesome. He was awesome against the Thunder. You go back to that Lakers game. He was awesome in that game. He was really good against the Denver Nuggets. Jarrett Allen just continues to impress. Like, he is somebody that to me looks like an all-star. I don't know if it's going to happen. And that is going to be the thing that I'm very interested in seeing is how much do the coaches value winning? What does the record for the Cavs need to be in order for them to get 4 all-stars on this roster? Do they have to not lose another game? I don't know. Probably. That's probably a little unfair to think. But, let's say they're at, trying to think how many games off the top of my head before the break, but let's say they're at 42-6 by time all-stars are named. I'm not sure if that's accurate as far as how many games are left before the selections are made. But let's say that's where they're at. Is that good enough to get 4 all-stars? Do they have to be better? Could they be worse? I don't have those answers. I do think it's interesting, and I absolutely detest the comparison between the Cavs and the 2014-15 Atlanta Hawks. I think it's terrible. I don't think it makes sense. But that team had 4 all-stars. I think that could be the only thing, that and the fact that, Damari Carroll, who's now a Cavs assistant coach, was on that Hawks roster, and Kenny Atkinson was assistant on that staff. I think that's kind of all they have in common. That Hawks team, which had 4 all-stars, was 43-11 at the break. Now, they went, I believe, 19-0 in the month of January. It was an incredible month for them. They were awesome, and that's sort of why that happened. But if that team was good enough, and I understand that you also have to, it's hard to compare what the Eastern Conference was back then compared to what the Eastern Conference is now. I don't think this conference is great at the moment, and I think there is an opportunity here because, you start running out of spots fast. But you also start getting down the list. It's like, okay, well, how much do you want to reward winning for what happens? Because at the end of the day, I really do think that should be something that matters when you're having this discussion. And the Cavs have been so good where they have the best record in basketball. They are off to a historic start. They are one of 4 teams in NBA history to have 2 12-game winning streaks within their first 40 games of the season. It's only happened 4 times in NBA history. The Cavs became one of those teams on Thursday night with that win over the Raptors. That is just the rarefied air they're in. And I do think that to have 4 all-stars, like, you have to be a special team. I'm not saying that you have to have won the title the year before or really had any semblance of success the year before. I think it is something that is very unique to that specific season. You have to do something historic. The Cavs have done something historic. They got off to the second best start in NBA history, I believe it was, at 15-0. Like I just said, they're the 4th team ever to have 2 12-game winning streaks within the first 40 games of the season. They are on pace at this point to win 73 games in a single season and tie the all-time wins record. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's the type of team this is. They are a team that, if they continue up like this, not even saying 73 win pace, but let's say they win 68 games, they're going to be a team that is remembered historically as an all-time great. And I think when you get into that area, I'm not talking about a team that just wins 60 games, because like if the Cavs go, a little bit over 500 the rest of the way, they'll get to 60 wins. But I'm talking about a team that is historic, and the Cavs are in that ballpark now. I think OKC is there too. But the Cavs are in the ballpark where it's like, okay, we're going to remember just how special this season was, no matter what happens in the postseason. This isn't a team that barely wins 60 games that goes 60-22 the way the Hawks did. They're gonna win mid to upper 60s. Like, they're on FanDuel, their win-loss total keeps going up and up and up and up. And I think that they've been good enough. And I think that Jarrett Allen has been good enough, especially the last couple of weeks. I think he's been good enough to warrant being named an all-star for the second time in his career. I think you saw that tonight with how good he was against Toronto. There were parts of this game really before Darius started really going off in the second half where it felt like, okay, well, Jarrett Allen kind of feels like the only guy that showed up tonight. And he has, I think, at times struggled on the second night of back-to-backs. But now this makes, I think, 2 in a row back-to-backs where he's been really good on the second night, because that Lakers game that he was awesome in, really, I thought outplayed Anthony Davis in that game. That was the second night of a back-to-back too. So I thought he was awesome tonight. I thought Evan Mobley was awesome tonight. I think both of those guys, I think all 3 members of the core 4 that played for the Cavs on Thursday night, I think they'll be all-stars. And we know Donovan Mitchell is going to start the all-star game. Now, the conversation with Jarrett Allen is not over. I think the conversation with Darius Garland should be over as far as being an all-star. I think the conversation with Evan Mobley should be over as far as being an all-star. Jarrett Allen, I think, is the guy up for debate, but I do think that it is possible. And I was not there prior to this game. I wasn't there prior to this week, but what he's done in the last 2 weeks has really stuck out to me and been something that I've been incredibly impressed with. He's been one of the best centers in the league, and he showed it absolutely on Thursday night in a win against the Raptors. Another guy who stepped up, Max Strus. Is he finding his groove? Let's talk about him. And Isaac Okoro has not looked good in his return from injury. I want to talk about that a little bit too, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. What Rocket Money does is they are a personal finance app that can help you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Maybe you've got subscriptions that you're happy to pay. Do you know that you might have subscriptions also that you are not aware you're paying? How up to date are you on your finances? Well, Rocket Money, what they can do is they can help track all that stuff and help cancel the subscriptions that you don't want to be paying. Maybe you're actually paying for something twice. Maybe there's a service out there you really love, can't live without it, but you actually have 2 subscriptions to it. You only need 1. You don't need it that bad that you need to pay for the same thing twice. Just got to pay for it once, and it works all the same. Rocket Money can make sure that is exactly where you are. Rocket Money, like I said, it's a personal finance app. Helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. That's what we want to do in 2025. We want to grow our savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Like I said, growing those savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Maybe you're paying for the same subscription twice. Maybe you're paying for something you don't know that you're paying for that you don't even use. Rocket Money can help you cancel that. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on, LOCKEDON, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Again, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Max Strus had a really good game again tonight for the Cavs. He made 4 more 3-pointers. This comes after Wednesday night against OKC. He hit 5 3-pointers, was a big key. Didn't really even get a chance to talk about how good he was in that game because there was so much to talk about from that game against the Thunder. But he was, I thought, awesome in that game. Thought he was awesome against the Raptors on Thursday night as well. I think he's starting to find his groove. And I don't think that it was some crazy thing to say, hey, maybe it's going to take a little bit for a guy who hasn't played all season. He's spoken a little bit about this sort of being like the preseason-ish for him, and maybe that time is coming to an end, that we're starting to see Max Strus be back into being Max Strus. And, we'll see what he starts shooting from the floor. I'm not expecting him to make 4 or 5 3-pointers every single night. He's going to have off nights, but I think it's a really good sign for the Cavs that he was able to do this on back-to-back nights, that he's really starting to look like the Max Strus that we expect him to be. And I have no doubts that he's going to be a really big part of this team in the spring come playoff time. But he's somebody that, as I've mentioned on this show over and over, I think he's going to elevate this team to a new level once he gets going. I thought it was important that he closed out the game on Wednesday night against OKC with the starters. And I do wonder if at a certain point he is put into the starting lineup, or I do wonder if Kenny Atkinson wants to keep it a little bit of a revolving door at small forward. It's hard to mess with what's working right now because the team has been so good when Dean Wade has been starting at small forward, and the fact that Dean is starting to shoot the ball a little bit better than he had earlier in the season. Tonight, not really, withstanding 1 of 5 from 3, but still a plus 12 for Dean Wade. But I do wonder if at a certain point they have the conversation about putting Max back in the starting lineup. If this is the guy Max Strus is going to be. On the other end of the spectrum, it was Isaac Okoro's second game back from a shoulder injury. He went 0-2 against the Thunder. He finished 0-5 from the floor against the Raptors on Thursday night, 0-4 from 3. I just wonder how comfortable he is shooting the basketball right now. Like, I wonder if he came back maybe a little early from that shoulder injury. I know Isaac is somebody that works incredibly hard, that is always spoken about as being one of the first guys in the facility, one of the last guys to leave the facility, that is very diligent in the way that he goes about his business. But I just wonder if he's still a little uncomfortable. And even think back to, and I know not all injuries are the same, and trust me, I get it with the shoulder injuries. I've had my fair share in when I was, playing football in college. Like, I had 3 shoulder surgeries, so I get it. They're not all the same. But think back a couple years ago, Dean Wade had an injured shoulder, and it took him a really long time to find his rhythm. And part of it was he hurt his ankle too, but he really struggled shooting the basketball after that shoulder injury. And I wonder if Isaac Okoro is going to go through that same thing, because he's not looked, at least in my opinion, super comfortable with his shot since coming. And it's only been 2 games. Maybe it was just a bad 2 games. I don't know. Maybe we'll learn more on Sunday when the Cavs are in action next against the Pacers. But I just don't think that he's looked right yet. No doubt that he'll get back there, but I don't think that he's looked right quite yet. So want to say thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today, making it your first listen every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you give us a 5-star review, and make sure you tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. I want to make sure you're subscribed. I want to make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Cavs play next on Sunday. Maybe I'll talk to you before then, but I will definitely talk to you after that.